Did the Gulf of Mexico almost completely dry up 55 million years ago during the Paleocene-Eocene transition? Is there evidence for that in the rock record? Welcome to Dr. Anton's Rock-o-Rama, and I'm here in Texas. We're going to go take a look at some rocks and see if we can answer that question. You never know what you're going to find, so let's get going. It's a nice hot day. Don't want to waste this burning sunshine. Believe it or not, there are outcrops here in southern Texas, and you have to drive to them, so that's what I'm doing. I'm heading about an hour north of where I live, and I'm going towards a little town called Bastrop. Take a look at this. We've got some topography, we've got some outcrops, and they're Pleistocene to Pliocene, so about 1,000,000 years or less. They're oxidized fluvial terrace deposits of the Colorado River, and that's where we're heading right now. Okay, we made it. It was a bit of a drive, about an hour north of where I live, and we're at a place called Bastrop. It's a little town on the Colorado River. The Colorado River is right behind me, and this causes a lot of confusion. A lot of people think the Colorado River, well, that's the one that's in Colorado and goes down to the Gulf of Mexico. There's actually a Colorado River here in Texas in an incised valley, and that's it. So we're on an outcrop now of some Paleocene and Eocene rocks. I did a quick video on it about 1.5 years ago. I should probably redo it. I gave some faulty terminology. That's neither here nor there. These are the rocks we're going to look at to see if we can answer our pressing question of the day, which is, did the Gulf of Mexico dry up 55 million years ago? Before I get into all that, there's a nice spot up here in the shade. So let me just pop in here and give you some background information while the FedEx truck goes by. We'll avoid getting hit by traffic. As always, be a safe geologist when you're out here looking at the rocks. All right, we found a nice place in the shade here. It's a pretty hot day out. It's like 100% humidity. It's like 97, 98 degrees, so it probably feels like, I don't know, 110, 112. Summertime in Texas. It's not even summer yet. It's still mid-May. But this is the outcrop we're going to talk about. And let me just give you a little bit of background why we're here, what we're talking about. So about 8-10 years ago, a couple of geologists came up with the idea that the Gulf of Mexico almost completely dried up. The water drained away, dropped down hundreds of meters, even a couple of kilometers. You're talking a couple of miles of vertical water missing, gone from the Gulf of Mexico. How'd that happen? Well, they proposed that sometime in the late Paleocene, right before the PETM, the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, that Cuba, which is on its own little tectonic element, collided with Florida, and Cuba and Florida combined mimicked what happened in the Straits of Gibraltar, and I'll get to that in a second. But they suggested that Cuba and Florida created a land bridge that effectively cut off the Gulf of Mexico from the Atlantic Ocean. In their model, that means that the Gulf of Mexico had no choice but to evaporate. Now, there's a couple of questions you might instantly ask about that. Like, what about all the rivers? Like, you know, the continent scale Mississippi that's dumping into the Gulf of Mexico, or the rivers like this one behind me, the Colorado. What about ones like that that are dumping in? So like I just mentioned, their model was probably partly inspired by what's called the Messinian crisis. And the Messinian salinity crisis, or the Messinian event, or the Messinian crisis, whatever you want to call it, is something that happened between about 6 million and 5.3 million years ago. Really briefly, essentially the Straits of Gibraltar pinched together, cut off the Mediterranean Sea from the rest of the Atlantic, and the Mediterranean climate, that nice hot, dry, warm climate, proceeded to evaporate the Mediterranean Sea. The water basically vanished. And in that time, at that place, there was not a lot of fresh water coming in from the rivers on continental Europe or northern Africa or anywhere else to refill that Mediterranean Sea. So it disappeared. Now, there's multiple lines of evidence to support that hypothesis, that interpretation. It's more than a hypothesis, it's a working theory. We have things like evaporite minerals that form only under subaerial exposure. But some recent studies have also shown they can form under shallow marine environments, so it remains to be proven. But if they were subaerial exposed, that means sea level had to have fallen. We also have terrestrial plants and animal fossils out in the Mediterranean. But as we also know, plant and animal remains get transported out into the ocean basins by rivers and flood, so even that's controversial. The amazing thing is that was all estimated to have happened in about 1,000 years, give or take. Similarly, it's been proposed that the Gulf of Mexico, round about the Paleocene, latest Paleocene, in about 1,000 years or less, disappeared completely. Now, there are big differences between the Gulf of Mexico and the Mediterranean. Number one, Gulf of Mexico is gigantic. Number two, it's got huge rivers with lots of fluvial input, lots of water, lots of sediment constantly spilling in. And not only that, but there's been no real evidence of terrestrial plants, animal fossils offshore Gulf of Mexico. There's some features out there that might be related to erosion. There's karstification, in other words, weathering of carbonates. Whether or not that was subaerial remains to be seen. I think that's enough of an introduction. Why don't we go take a look at these rocks, see if we can discern anything in here that indicates there was a big subaerial exposure. Okay, so by now you might be asking yourself, wait a minute, Anton. You're looking at an outcrop up by Bastrop, which is currently about 160 miles away, 150 miles from the shoreline, the Gulf of Mexico. These rocks are Paleocene up into the Eocene. Why are we looking here if the theory is that the Gulf of Mexico went down? Shouldn't the rocks that we're looking at be all the way out there in the Gulf of Mexico? Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, I can't dive down a couple of miles below the Gulf of Mexico to take a look down there and see if it evaporites. Number two, less cynically, during the Paleocene and the Eocene, the shoreline here in Texas was actually up here. The shoreline was north of Bastrop. It was in Bastrop. It was a little south of Bastrop. So in other words, the coastline that we all know and love right now, which is 150 miles that way, was actually way up here. That's because global sea level was a lot higher. North America in this part of the world was a lot lower because there hadn't been any glacial loading of the northern part of North America to kind of uplift the Gulf Coast. And actually the Gulf Coast is subsiding now because it's still bouncing down as northern North America rebounds from the glaciers being gone. So there's tectonic reasons, there's sea level reasons. Be that as it may, these are the shoreline rocks of that PE boundary section. And if there's any evidence of subaerial exposure, sediment bypass, that sort of thing associated with a fall in sea level, we should find it here. You might not know what to look at this cliff, but there's actually two different formations behind me. One is the Sabine Town, which is this lower dark gray, kind of laminated, wavy to lenticular bedded sandy silt, and we'll look at that closer in a second. Then there's the Carrizo Formation, which is the sandstone up above me. And based on biostratigraphy from algae, microfossils, forams, things like that, this Sabine Town is about 56 million years old. There's a dark band up there that represents the Paleocene-Eocene boundary. That's that PETM, the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum. And that's been dated at about 55.8 or 9 million, 55 million, depending on whose dates you're using. But it's basically sits right on top of this wavy and lenticular Sabine Town. Between the dark band and the Carrizo, there's a gap. This is 56. That's about 51 and a half. So we're missing, was that 4.5 million years of time. So there's an unconformity above that dark band. This warrants investigation because the timing of this, as it turns out, is really important for the theory about what's going on with the Gulf of Mexico. First things first, let's take a look at the facies, the sedimentology, the ichnology, and so on in the Sabine Town and see if we can make heads or tails of it. Okay, yeah, look at that. There's some really nice wavy bedding. There's also that kind of really distinct dark to light banding. And in fact, that is organic rich carbonaceous shale, and the lighter material is sand. So we have dark organic rich material, we've got sand, we've got wavy and lenticular bedding. Look at this. You even have some foresets going that direction. Now, you probably already know this, but the angle of orientation of these foresets tells you which way the current was flowing. Now that way is north, the shoreline was north, so these currents are actually heading towards shoreline. They're not river currents going off that direction. They're probably tidal currents coming in. Likewise, this heterogeneity, meaning the carbonaceous shale, the sand, carbonaceous shale, sand, and this kind of wavy and flasier bedding. This is actually flasier bedding here where you have little troughs of ripples draped with organic rich material. That's very common in oscillating currents. So currents are kind of high and low, high and low. So all this looks very much like a tidal system. So that Sabine Town, that Paleocene, latest Paleocene right before the PETM, this looks like it's a tidal deposit. Maybe a tidal bar, maybe a tidal delta. Incidentally, ignore this gravel. That's a wash. That's all modern stuff that's washed down over the outcrop. Okay, you knew I couldn't come up here and not look at some little burrows and things. I love traces of living organisms. In here, we've got some really nice traces of very simple horizontal burrows, little traces probably made by polychaete worms. We've also got some little vertical traces, again, probably made by worms, but maybe little amphipods in these tidal deposits. So these are things like Scolithos, Planolites. Now, if you watched my video on tiger beetle burrows, I hope you did, you'll know that a lot of things can make Scolithos. But in this situation, we've got this really heterolithic material that looks tidal, we've got horizontal burrows, we've got vertical burrows. It's probably a safe bet that these are actually little marine organisms or brackish water organisms like you find on the Texas Gulf Coast today. Looking closely in the sand, you can see we've got some little vertical burrows, and these are actually oxidized around them. There's an oxidation layer up here suggesting that there was some rust happening, basically oxidation at the sediment surface, and that water was flowing down into the burrows and rusting the sides of the burrows. So this burrow was active at the time that this surface was active. That's interesting. It tells us that burrow is related to that surface. And above this heterolithic tidal bar, tidal flat, there's a cleaner sand, which could be the top of the bar. It could be the progradational part of this tidal delta bar that's kind of built out. But take a look here. This is that PETM boundary section I was telling you about, the dark organic rich layer. I made a big deal about the age of it. If the Gulf of Mexico dried up, and the theory goes, according to these guys who proposed it a few years ago, when sea level in the Gulf of Mexico dropped in the Paleocene, so in the Paleocene, widespread erosion and soil formation took place up here on the continent. There should be big fluvial channels. There should be obvious paleosols, oxidized soils. There should be even maybe some evaporites like gypsum, anhydrite, salt, things like that. According to that theory then, that helped boost global temperatures and create the onset of the PETM. So the theory is that happened before the PETM. Now, we know from biostratigraphic data, this is the PETM. This is immediately before the PETM. We got a pretty good tidal deposit. This is shallow marine. If the Gulf of Mexico had dropped hundreds of meters or kilometers, this should all be fluvial terrestrial with root traces from all the plants that grow on it and stuff like that. Instead, what we're seeing is what looks like a really perfectly good tidal mouth bar, tidal delta bar, followed by some sort of transgressive surface with deeper water material on it. And I'm saying it's transgressive in deeper water because it's laminated, it's organic rich, it doesn't look like a soil. This looks like the kind of stuff you see in marine environments. The caveat to all that is right above us in here, this is the Carrizo. This is that Eocene formation. It says 4 million years of time missing between here and that. Okay, so could this 4 million years of missing time be tied into the drop in sea level? You can't say absolutely 100% no, but what I can tell you is the timing doesn't match what's been proposed, because the model suggests that drop in sea level happened down here in the Paleocene. We're not seeing any evidence of it. Okay, that was really funny. I just ran into Pete Flagg, the geologist who's actually done all the sedimentology and stratigraphy work out here, along with a fellow named Thomas Demchuk, who did the biostrat. And Pete's at UT Austin, so he's here with a group, an oil company group, and they're looking at these very same rocks, talking about the Gulf of Mexico, talking about the PETM. This place is getting to be like the Book Cliffs. It's like the mini Book Cliffs of Texas. Anyway, it was great to see other geologists out here. This is a really cool outcrop. If you ever get a chance, if you're driving by Bastrop, swing by, take a look at it. Anyway, this is the Carrizo. This is that Eocene sandstone. And again, it's cross-bedded. Man, it's very, very fine-grained sandstone. The cross-beds are dipping landward again. Everything's super fine. Look at that, it's just crumbling. There's a lot of burrows in it, but these are modern borings made by wasps and bees that burrow into the outcrop. Again, we're seeing some of that heterogeneity. So we've got four sets going. Some are going seaward, some are coming landward. This heterogeneity, that kind of orange color, is probably organic material that's rusted in place. And I say rusted, I just mean oxidized. That happens with organic material. So this too looks like tidal deposits. Now again, this is later in the Eocene. This is about 4.5, 5 million years later than the Paleocene section down there. But it's tidal. So we've gone from tidal below and unconformity, missing time, tidal above. But in between them, there's not really any clear-cut evidence of a sea level fall. More importantly, in the Paleocene, no evidence of a sea level fall. So I'm going to say, based on what we're seeing on this outcrop, where we've got tidal deposits in the Paleocene, some missing time and tidal in the Eocene, we're not really seeing evidence for that big sea level fall in the late Paleocene prior to the PETM. So what's the verdict? Is there evidence that the Gulf of Mexico completely dried up during the late Paleocene prior to the PETM? In this case, based on what I'm seeing in the rocks, I'm going to have to give it a big no. No. There's no evidence in this outcrop. Does that mean it didn't happen? It's hard to say. There's always some wiggle room and interpretations, but I'm going to stick with what I actually see in the rocks. In this case, I see no evidence. Thanks for watching. I hope you had a good time, and I'll see you next time on the outcrop.